And I think also to go back to what you were saying about the political reality of countries in South America, it made me think of a question, um, which is birding a social luxury?
No, I don't think so. Maybe in the past, maybe in the past, because like I said before, it was people didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
At least most of the people. But there was maybe several small groups of that they had time to go birding, and maybe people that traveled to the world, and went to Europe and maybe buy some good binoculars or a camera or something. But here in Chile, we didn't have those things. I don't know why I started to bird, because I like nature. I started very young, so I think that's the reason.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Birding Today podcast, where birders come together to discuss the joy of birding. I'm your host, Thomas Doerig. Hope everyone is doing well out there. This is going to be an exciting episode, an international episode this week, because my guest today is a Chilean naturalist who embraced birding as a lifelong passion. His acquaintance with birds started at age 10 in Europe, where he was particularly interested in corvids. Upon returning to Chile, he started studying the birds of the country, becoming very knowledgeable on them, thanks in part to more than 25 years of field experience. He has been a professional birding guide since 2004. Today's guest has been involved in many different ornithological projects, among them wetland bird population counts in central Chile, where he was in charge of the coordination for Wetlands International's neotropical waterfowl census for several years. He leads pelagic trips to the Humboldt Current off the Chilean coast and field trips all over Chile, from the Atacama Desert to Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego, and from the high Andean peaks to the Pacific Ocean, including the Juan Fernandez Archipelago. And he also works in environmental education in many schools in Valparaíso and as a birding guide for CODEF Valparaíso, which is BirdLife in Chile, and renowned wildlife-orientated lodges and companies like Mari Mari Nature Reserve, Olmue Natura Lodge, Patagonia Fjord Expeditions, and Travel in Chile. And lastly, he has published several articles and photographs in scientific magazines, bulletins, and specialized books, including the Bird and Nature Guide of Valparaíso, as well as being a member of the Chilean Ornithologists Union. So please welcome Rodrigo Reyes on the show. How are you, Rodrigo?
Hi, Thomas. I'm fine, thank you. And thanks a lot for this invitation. I'm pretty exciting. A little bit nervous because my English is not my native language. So, but I try to do my best. So I apologize if I say something wrong. And but yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's very good to have you on the show, and Rodrigo is a friend of mine because we've met several times in Chile for birdwatching. I've been on one of his pelagic trips into the Humboldt Current, and that was absolutely amazing. And I hope we can talk a little bit about that today. But the first question that I ask my guests is a simple one: what aspect of birding brings you joy?
Well, I think there are many things. One of the great things is that you can bird almost anywhere. So, for example, if I'm home a few minutes from the window, I can see some birds, and there are always birds. You can always go to the nearest park, and you'll find birds. It's very easy. You don't need much equipment, at least at first.
Mm,
And a pair of binoculars and field guide, and that's it. That's ready to go. And I think that's just the fact of going out in the nature is already something that I really like. It's a real therapy. I really love it. So leaving the city, forget about the phone, forget about social networks, and just listening to the nature. The wind, the sounds of the trees. And of course the singing of the bird songs. So that's where the really funny parts begin.
yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And you touched on the proximity of birds, right? That's very interesting because sometimes I think a lot of birders, and I'm guilty of this, and I think about this sometimes, that you have to go really far or somewhere very wild to see lots of good birds. But you
Right.
can just go to the park, or the local area, or if you live next to a river, or if you live next to the ocean, or if you have a small patch of forest next to your house. Birds are everywhere, right? For
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny part. They're easy to see. Sometimes mammals, I like mammals a lot, but they're not easy. At least here in Chile, we have a lot of small mammals. They're mostly nocturnal, but the birds, they're easy to see. You can see them, the flies, the colors, no, they're amazing. So I really like that. And trying to, of course, to identify these birds, that are singing, of course, seeing them, watching them, seeing what they do. Some are hunting, others are making nests. They're always doing something, and seeing that and trying to learn that gives me a lot of joy. I think that's what I really like, trying to learn about these amazing species.
Yeah, definitely. And there's always, you can be an expert in birds, but there's always going to be a little bit more that you can learn, right? For any species or any family, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And so about this interest in birds that you have, and you're you're a national expert on birds, one of the national experts in the whole country for birds. But when we go back a few steps in your life, what was it that first sparked your interest in birds, and specifically, why corvids? Because this is interesting. This is very interesting because I believe I'm right. There aren't any corvids in Chile at all. There's no corvid species.
No corvids. Yeah, I think it's probably the only country in the world. I think there are some introduced species in New Zealand, but maybe Chile and New Zealand are the only countries without native corvids.
Wow.
And well, actually, we don't have any introduced corvids. Yeah, I don't know why.
Because you went to Europe to study them, is that right?
Yeah, well, I always like nature. I remember from a very young age, I was distracted by insects, ants, and sometimes if a tarantula appeared, that was spectacular. They were quite common in the past here in central Chile. Now they're not easy to see, but yeah, they were very common in the past. And like many children, I like dinosaurs a lot. So when I was 6 or 7 years old, I remember I asked my parents for books about dinosaurs. So I started to read about this. I tried to learn the names of dinosaurs, and I think that led me to try to learn about other species, other mammals or birds, and so a few years later, I remember I knew the most common birds in my backyard and also here in the neighborhood. I live in Viña del Mar. That's a coastal city in central Chile. So with my parents, we used to go to the seashore or to the beach. So other birds were there, like gulls, pelicans, cormorants, boobies, etc. So that started to open a window to the natural world.
Yeah.
And why corvids? Well, when I was about 10, we moved to Sweden with my parents and my little brother. We spent there a few years, and of course, when I came to Sweden, I continued birding, and other species began to appear, and in gardens, parks, everywhere, and some very charismatic birds and very funny, and like magpies and crows.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know more about these species, and that moment I got my first bird book. Actually, I have it here.
Oh wow! Oh, and it's in Swedish as well. That's amazing.
In Swedish, yeah, in Swedish, yeah. That's our most common birds. That's the title. And I didn't know much Swedish actually, so I just saw the the pictures, the names, the Latin names are quite easy for us, Spanish speaking. So I tried to learn the Latin names, the scientific names. And I had a friend. He was a classmate, and his parents they come from Uruguay, so he spoke very good Spanish, and he was native from Sweden. I mean, he was born in Sweden, so he spoke perfect Swedish. So I remember coming to his house very often and asking for help with translation, with the book. So I started to learn a few words, and then that's what the beginning of more seriously.
Yeah.
And then of course there were other birds to discover, other species, other families, etc. From there, I think I started to do my first walks further from home, and I started to bird more seriously. So I think that's why corvids are very special to me. That was like the first beginning, and I still love them. It's one of my best birds. I really loved corvids still.
Yeah.
The behavior, the sounds, the vocals are very interesting, and they were quite easy to see. I remember we have the hooded crow was very common in Europe in general, but very common in Sweden. There was a jackdaw, I think it's Eurasian jackdaw, I think is the name, and the Eurasian magpie. Those three were very common, and they were very funny to see, to watch. They were intelligent birds, so they did a lot of funny things. So I remember just seeing. I spent hours and watching these species, and it was really fun.
Thank you for listening to the Birding Today podcast. It's great to have you with us. If you're enjoying the show, don't hesitate to leave a positive review on whichever podcast app you're using at the moment. This really helps with getting the podcast up in search results and reaching more people. Thank you, and back to the show. Lots of very, very interesting topics there that you touched on, and I think one of them is birding as a way to cross linguistic barriers. So you went to this completely different culture and different linguistic environment, and thanks to birds, you were able to cross that, and we still do that. We're doing that right now with English and Spanish. And when I went to Chile, when I first went there, I didn't speak Spanish, but I wanted to go to Chile to see the endemic Chilean birds back in 2016. So birding can be such a powerful way to explore the world. It's sort of the motor that gets you going to explore the world. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Agree. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
it's incredible.
And the next point that I want to touch on is, and I think I'm not sure about this, but corvids are the most intelligent birds in the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably. They're always among the most intelligent birds. They are they're, for example, the corvids with the genus Corvus. All the common raven, the crows, they're among the most intelligent birds. They're almost like primates, primates. Yeah.
Really? So the intelligence levels of corvids is comparable to that of primates. That's astounding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They're amazing.
Yeah. And well, so I guess it's a little bit ironic that you're so passionate about those, but there's no species of corvids in Chile.
Yeah.
But speaking about Chile, my listeners know, regular listeners know that I love Chile, and I spent a few years there, and I loved the birding there, and a lot of my great birding was thanks to you, personally. I really enjoy the birding scene. So I guess what I'm interested in, and what listeners would be interested in, is your thoughts on how is Chile unique for birding and ecotourism?
Well, for example, if we compare ourselves with other countries in South America, I think we have fewer species, less species. But the ones we do have are relatively easy to see, and I think we have some iconic birds. And several endemics, at least many areas of endemism. that, for example, we share with Argentina or Bolivia or Peru. But many of these birds, if you really want to see them, you have to come to Chile.
Yeah.
Pelagic birds, are among the most amazing birds, and they're quite most wanted by birders. We're very lucky here where you can take a trip. For example, you can leave at 7 a.m. and be back at 12 or 1 p.m. so you can have lunch on the mainland, and you have seen a lot of birds, albatrosses and petrels, and we're quite close to the Humboldt Current. So I think, all the seabirds and marine birds and the pelagic birds are quite easy here in Chile, and I think that's one of the good things we have.
Yeah.
And of course we can do a pelagic trip in the morning, and then we can be up in the Andes and watching condors. Chile is a long country, but very narrow. So in about 3 hours you can be from, I don't know, 3,000 meters of height, and you can be at the sea level in 2 hours and a half, 3 hours. So you go through a lot of different ecosystems and habitats, and so that's, I think, is quite unique. You can go through different kind of habitat. Well, of course, a lot of species in any and all this kind of habitat.
Yeah.
So we have good roads, relative good roads. You can get almost anywhere quite easy. Sometimes that's not easy in other countries in South America. You travel for hours and you just go 50 kilometers. And here you can really, it's very connected. It's a very connected country, except maybe for some places in Patagonia. Chile is a very easy to travel country. So, and it's quite safe. Also in terms of, we don't have, poison bugs or snakes, or, that is very common in other countries, but here you can touch everything. You can walk, it's quite easy. And of course we have all these different habitats, like I mentioned, the Andes, for example. You go to the Andes and you find hillsides, cliffs, bogs, upland valleys, lakes, rivers, and all this occupied by a very interesting bird species, and sometimes endemics.
Yeah.
We have a breathtaking geography, variety kind of landscapes from the Altiplano to Patagonia, etc. So I think landscapes, you can combine landscapes with birds, and easy to travel. So I think that could be the great things we have here, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you compare Chile to other countries in South America, but I guess the Andes act as a natural barrier to the rest of the continent, really. I guess Peru to the north isn't, it's not quite as much as a barrier there, I guess. But when you go from when you go from west to east, that's where you get that big mountain chain. I remember when I went with you up to Valle del Yeso, which was really, really amazing. And you see, you really feel the presence of the Andes. There's nothing at all like that in Australia. Australia is very flat, comparatively speaking. But I guess the similarities between Chile and Australia is that in Australia as well, we have a huge variety of habitats.
Right.
And also birds, different species of birds that, and of course the level of endemism in Australia is very, very high in terms of avifauna, because it's a continent. It's like,
I know, yeah.
So,
and you have a lot of seabirds too, and I think we have very similar things, very similar aspects. And
I think also the pelagic, a lot of birders here are pelagic tragics, as we say. They love to go on pelagics, and the continental shelf, especially in the southern areas of Australia, are not too far off the coast. But in Chile, it's like the continental shelf is right on the coast. So that's why you can go so quickly out there, and the bird life there is incredible as well. Like and so in terms of birding in Chile, I know personally from experience being there, and of course you do as well, that maybe in terms of the popularity of birding, this is very interesting to me, you know, the human side and the social side of birding and the passion for birds that people have. Maybe in Chile and South America generally, it's not as popular as in, for example, North America, Europe, or Australia.
Right.
What do you think there's a reason for that?
Uh, yeah, maybe. Well, you know, we had a lot of problems in South America 30, 40 years ago, political problems, social problems. So I think back at that time, most of the people wanted to had these basic things. They didn't have time for birding, for other things. They care about the education, I don't know, health, things like that. That wasn't that good 40 years ago. So, but now I think South America in general is better and better in those terms. More stable countries. We still have problems in many countries in South America, but in general, it's more stable countries now. You know, the politics of that, the governments are more. I think they care about more people now. You know, so now I think we have and of course social networks. It's a lot of things, I think, but the last in Chile, I think that the last 15 or 20 years, the birding has grown a lot. There have always been local birds in Chile, but always very few. I would say that bird watching began to grow in about 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
And and I think because to very good field guides that we didn't have before. I remember we had a field guide that was in from the 80s, and that was the first one, and it was very basic, not pictures at all, just a very few illustrations and black and white illustrations.
Oh wow!
Not much information. Yeah, we're very basic, and that was actually that was the only field guide we had in the past in the 80s, and all the way to 2003. I think that was when the next field guide came to Chile. This Álvaro Jaramillo is a very good field guide, and I think was a big change here in Chile. So I believe that in the last 10 years, local birding has grown a lot.
Yeah.
And mainly young people also, often connected to conservation or environmental care, education. So here, for example, you see a lot of young people birding. A lot. Yeah. Many young people are into birding now, and it's very popular now. It's a lot of people. It's groups everywhere. If you look at Facebook or Instagram, you find several groups, many groups of. And that was 20 years ago was impossible.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think the opposite is true in countries like the UK and Australia and North America. There are more, I guess, elderly people. Maybe that's not the right word, but a more mature age dynamic. Yeah. Whereas that's interesting that you say there's more young birders in Chile.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. And I think also to go back to what you were saying about the political reality of countries in South America, it made me think of a question, which is birding a social luxury?
No, I don't think so. Maybe in the past, because like I said before, it was people didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
At least most of the people, but there was maybe several small groups of that they had time to go birding, and maybe people that traveled to the world, and went to Europe and maybe buy some good binoculars or a camera or something. But here in Chile, we didn't have those things. I don't know why I started to bird, because I like nature. I started very young, so I think that's the reason. And like me, there are like many people like that they started very young here in Chile. We didn't have any resource. I mean, we didn't have much money to do it, but we started, very very young, and I think that was the reason. But I think that time maybe it was a luxury to be a birder. And I mean to older people, like to travel inside the country and things like that. And now it's I don't think so. No, now it's quite easy. You don't need much equipment, at least at first. Now we have very good cameras in Chile, so it's a lot of photography, photographers everywhere, but I think today is for everyone in South America. I think that
And it's funny that you mentioned photography as well. This was one of the questions or the topics that I wanted to talk about with you is and it's linked to the growing popularity of birding in Chile and elsewhere. But that's eBird, right?
Yeah.
And this is one critical aspect of birding that links the whole world of birding. eBird is huge here in Australia, and I believe it's huge in Chile. I mean, when I was in Chile, I loved to do eBird lists, and so what do you think about eBird? Do you use it a lot, and do you think it's beneficial to the birding world?
Oh yes, definitely. I think that the growth of eBird in Chile goes directly hand in hand with the growth of birders, local birders. And today, the amount of data on many species that we have, for example, like distribution, abundance, occurrence, etc., is thanks to eBird. And it's incredible. It's amazing. It's great for searching for rare species, the records, things like that. So I think it's a great tool. Definitely a great tool. And for example, within the global big day, in May, Chile is always very well placed in terms of lists, uploaded lists. So I think eBird is I think it's great, and I use it a lot. Almost, I would say maybe 95% of all the trips I do, I try to. Sometimes I forgot because I don't have time, in big trips or something like that. So maybe one places I forgot to put the eBird list, but I try to always do it. Yeah.
Can you think of a disadvantage that eBird can bring, or is it mostly positive in your eyes?
I think it's mostly positive. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, perhaps there is a few. But I haven't thought about that. But I think it's mostly positive. I think it's especially here in countries like Chile, because like I said before, the birding in Chile, we don't have a huge history in birding. So I will say maybe the last 15-20 years, that's it. And now we have a lot of information, a lot of books, but still we don't have that much information, for example, as European countries or Australia or New Zealand or the States, etc. So I think eBird gives a lot of information.
Good definitely.
Information about many species and very accurate information. I think it's a very good tool. It's very positive. Maybe there is some bad things about it, but I don't know.
It's worth it.
I have to think about that.
Right? It's definitely the benefits outweigh the negatives, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
And I think it's a way of sharing birding, And I want to move to the next topic of bird festivals in Chile. right? Because and one in particular that I think I attended. I'm not sure if it was the festival or if it was like a workshop, but in Olmué, for example, where you organize the festival there and you manage the operations. So in terms of the social side of it, so that the Festival de Aves de Olmué, the bird festival there, what's the importance of bird festivals? And I think in Australia there aren't many bird festivals at all, you know, which surprises me. Actually, because there's comparatively quite a lot of birders when you compare it to a country like Chile, but you know there aren't many bird festivals. So why do you think that is, and what's the importance of bird festivals around the world?
Yeah, I think that's another thing that has helped the progress in birding in Chile. Has been the bird festivals, the bird fairs, and other similar kind of activities or events that didn't exist until 15 years ago. Actually, in 2008, we participated in the organization of the first bird festival in Chile. That was held in Viña del Mar, the city I live, and it was a big success. So and later many similar events began to take place in many other places in Chile throughout the whole country. So I don't know why, but it happened, and I think these things managed to bring together people that wasn't so interesting in bird watching. But from this kind of approach, they began to learn about nature, wildlife, in general, and of course in birds. So I believe that this type of events has given very good results, at least here in Chile. And it seems to me that the main goal of bringing the community closer to the natural world has given great results.
I think it's important for people who want to get into birding. It's kind of a paradox, because to be able to you have to learn about the birds first, I guess, right? I mean, you can enjoy the birds without knowing much about them, but when you really start to get passionate about it, you want to learn more, right? And to learn more, you need other people. I guess you could learn it from a book or from the internet, but I think when you learn it from people that you look up to, like I very much look up to you in terms of birding, like honestly, and I think you have a lot of that, in the social world of birding, like people teaching other people, for sure. For this week's Species of the Episode segment, I thought it would be very fitting to showcase the delightful Chilean mockingbird, known in Chilean Spanish as the tenca. This common and widespread species occupies a wide range of habitats in central Chile, from sea level to approximately 2,200 meters. Its chattering song is a familiar sound to Chilean birders. I was lucky enough to capture this video and audio near the capital, Santiago. The Chilean mockingbird is undoubtedly one of Chile's most charismatic birds, and is most often seen perching on fences, exposed to branches, poles, or moving about on the ground. Back to the show. And a way of learning and teaching that social dynamic is to do it professionally, and you're a professional birding guide, and you've been operating your own business, your own birding ecotourism business. So I want to promote that a little bit, do some promotion for you, because you do great work. So first of all, I guess it's a two-part question. What was the process of becoming a professional bird guide, and then and how does that go hand in hand with Birdwatching Chile, which is your company?
Well, of course, it's not a formal place to at least here in South America, to study something, like being a bird guide. So I naturally everyone, they become a birding guide. of course, you need to have experience in the field and read about birds, and that will give you knowledge. And then naturally, I at least in my case, I began to show birds to friends,
Yeah.
to family, and later to groups of people interested in nature. So over time, different kind of groups here in the area, they started to call me to guide groups of people interested in nature generally. So I showed the birds and everything, and so I think all this motivated me to become a rather more professional guide, and with this I started a very small company called Trenca Trail. Trenca is a Mapuche word. It's a native, Aboriginal native people. That means mockingbird, suggesting, our endemic Chilean mockingbird, which is a very common bird here in central Chile. So I started doing tours, small tours in this part of the country, which included the Andes, the coastal range, which is another ecosystem. Of course, the coast, and including pelagic trips. So I had like 3 or 4 birding trips, and you can combine this. So I remember my longest tour was 4 days, 3 nights.
Yeah.
All here in central Chile. So and about until 2006, I met a friend. His name is Rodrigo Tapia. He's a biologist. He's an ornithologist, and so we started to work together, and we realized that we had to cover more. Not only here in central Chile, we had the tools to do it. So we only needed to organize ourselves better. And so I think that was the moment that Birdwatching Chile was born. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess also the fact that birding, this was several years ago, right? So
yeah,
there wasn't much competition for you either, right?
No, not at all. The moment I started, 2004, there was 3 companies in Chile.
Wow.
One was a big company now called For South Expeditions.
Yeah.
They were huge. They do trips all over South America, not only in Chile. They go out, and they're very well organized. Then there was a smaller company in northern Chile called Birding Altiplano, I think was the name. But it's not exist anymore. They did trips in the high Andean plateau, in the Altiplano, in Putre area. Arica is the most city in Chile.
Yeah.
And there was another company that also doesn't exist anymore. Was in southern Chile. They had a lodge, and they did trips from the lodge. But so I will say that now, there's more companies, but not many. So I don't think, we don't have any competition. I think it's better because we still trying to offer Chile, as a birding location in general. So people, birders are starting to come to Chile now, because there is more offers.
And so today there's still relatively few competitors for you still today. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Because
no money bird guides.
Wow. Because Santiago itself, or I think Chile as a whole has like 18 million people, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Close to 20 million now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's not that far behind Australia, and and as a contrast, I think Australia has quite a lot of bird guides, and there is quite a bit of competition, but still not as much as perhaps in the UK or in the US. There you have lots of different levels of popularity of birding in the world. At the top maybe the UK and the US, and then maybe continental Europe, and then Australia, New Zealand, and then after that maybe the rest of the world, including Chile.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting, and I think it's also on my mind to ask you about the challenges and the pleasures of running a bird company. Like, because it's often said when your passion becomes your work, it depends on your personality, but it can go both ways, right? You can start to, do you know what I mean? Like, what are the...
Yeah, exactly. I think there are many challenges. One very important is trying to be able to live from this. It is possible. In my case, at least, I confirm it. It is possible. It is possible. But there are many things that are out of our hands. For example, economical crisis in the world. That means that fewer people comes to Chile, for example, or comes to anywhere. Internal problems in the country. For example, we had a big crisis, social crisis in 2019, just a few years ago, a year before this pandemic, which was another thing that nobody, in the world ever imagined, I think. And so those things are not easy. And I think you have to be very responsible with, for example, income. So you have to really know that that tourism in general is undergoes sudden changes. There are better seasons than other seasons, and so that's and I think one of the challenges is perhaps try to break this seasonality.
Yeah.
So in much of Chile you can bird all year. In fact, central Chile and northern Chile is perfect in winter, but that not many people knows that. So I think that's one of the challenges, for example, to and then perhaps the coordination between the different services that we offer.
Yeah,
That's you have to coordinate transportation with schedules, transfers, birding times, hotels, meals, flights, and of course any unexpected events that may arise. So because it happens. So the good coordination of all this depends a lot on a good organization. So I think those are big challenges, and also we know that the success of a birding trip depends a lot of the birding guide. So
I thought that's interesting. I thought you were going to say the success of a birding trip depends on the birds, but you said it depends on the birding guide. Why?
I think so.
Why is that?
Yeah, because I think most of the birds, I think all the birds if for example, if you don't see a bird, a hard to see bird, it happens. It can happen. Nature, it's part of the birding thing. It's not like going to a zoo that that you're going to see a lion in the cage and you'll see it. But this is you never know about, with birds. But of course, the success depends a lot of the birding guy, because he knows he can transmit this knowledge to the people. He knows the spots. And so sometimes we can have problems with in the lodge. We have a big problems in Chile because most of the hotels they don't have breakfast early. They're starting to serve breakfast very late, and that's a big challenge because we need to have breakfast very early to go out and bird. So that's things like that. But those things sometimes can be a little bit complicated. But the bird guide, he must be perfect. I think that's a clue. I think that's a challenge. You need to be a good birding guide. You don't need to be a very knowledge. I mean, you don't need to have a lot of knowledge, but you need to be a good guide. You have to really show the birds and I think that's
and with it's a very high standard, right? And necessarily with a high standard like that comes pressure and stress, I imagine. I'm not a birding guide yet. Maybe I will be one day, but I'm interested in the psychological side of things. because you mentioned at going back to the start of the episode, you know, the joy of birding being, you know, the birds are are in close proximity. We can go and see them, the variety of birds. But doesn't that get tainted a little bit when you have this pressure and stress linked to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. Yeah. For example, sometimes in a long trip, we have 22 days trips.
Wow, that's
Those
long.
are our longest trips in Birdwatching Chile that we offer.
Yeah.
And there are moments of, you know, great fatigue. And then you just, you know, you only want just to go to sleep, or sometimes always you have some people for a, you know, you being so, I'm sorry, sometimes always with the same people for a long time. You have to try to stay calm and not get into, for example, conflicts with the group, or maybe with a certain person. So because that can happen, you know, it can happen. So but however, I think once you are out in the field, you just forget about then all the problems, and you just go birding. I think that's the good things about it.
Yeah, it's the same as eBird, isn't it? You know, there are maybe some disadvantages and challenges to go with that, but in the end, the advantages and the joys are superior, right? Because a lot of the joy of birding is social and sharing it with others and teaching, you know. And yeah, I'm very interested in all of that, you know. And of course, you get, I guess, customers or travelers in the birding world, and people that contact you to go birding, and indeed that contact any birding ecotourism company, are very specific market types, right? They're not necessarily after luxury. They just want to get to see where the birds are.
Exactly.
You know? It's very specific. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, it happens. But this birding is always fun. Even a place, for example, is well known, at least for us. Something exciting can always happen. So you never know with birds. So yeah, I think that's the funny part of it. Yeah.
I just want to add this. So I think around 80% of the listeners of the show are Australia based. So lots of Australians are listening to this conversation now. So I would encourage all of you listening to definitely go to Chile and book a trip with Rodrigo, because Chile is incredible for birds. How can people contact you for more information?
Well, I have a website called birdwatchingchile.com, and I have a similar email, birdwatchingchile Gmail, and or info Birdwatching Chile. So, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Birdwatching Chile, or my name, Rodrigo Reyes, Birdwatching Chile. You'll find me in social networks. So yeah, you can send me any emails, and I will try to respond.
Yeah, you'll get lots of Australians coming soon, I think.
I have some. I have had some Australian groups.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. What did you think of Australian birders?
No, great birders. Yeah, very similar to they were like mix between Americans and British. They're in between, I think. Yeah, very funny people. Yeah, that's I think that's but also many photographers. I have I remember I had a big group of, I think it was like 8 or 10 Australians, and they were all photographers. Wow. More than birders.
Yeah.
I also had some birders from Australia, but really hardcore birders from Australia. But I remember I had this big group of 10 photographers, but they were very funny. Yeah, and very easy to go on. Yeah. They didn't care about like you said before, they didn't care about the hotels, luxury, just care about the birds.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, of course, like you said, it's a challenge to show all the birds they really want to see. But for example, if you don't see certain species, it can happen, and I think most of the birds know that, you know.
Yeah.
You never know. So yeah, but I think easy Chile is quite easy. I don't think we have like very very hard species, except for maybe those records, because we have a lot of birds, but also we have birds that they are not common in Chile, just a few records. So, but I think most of the Chilean birds, the endemics and some hard to get birds, are quite easy. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a very enjoyable birding, and a lot.
Yeah,
What I find is the birds are quite visible in Chile. You know that
exactly. Yeah.
a lot of them are quite vocal as well. And the variety of habitats is amazing. And I'll make sure I put down all your social media links and your contact details in the show notes as well,
Thank you.
so people can contact you. And so just a few more questions. I guess just to close is, how would you? I don't really know how to word this, but in terms of Australian birding, do you know a lot of? I don't believe you've ever been to Australia. Have you?
No,
Mm.
no,
Okay.
never.
Have you? Do you? Would you like to go?
Oh yes, yeah. Australia and New Zealand or two of the countries I really want to visit someday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. It would be great to have you. So whenever you want to come over, just give us
I'll
a
try.
bell. And,
Yeah.
yeah. And in terms of the concluding questions, I ask this for every guest on the show: is what is your favorite bird?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I like tube noses, petrels, albatrosses, those kind of birds. I like them very much. Maybe because I have done many pelagic trips, so I really, I'm very quite, I know them. So I really like them, and you never know because you can always see a rare species, in pelagic trips. So I like pelagic trips in general, and I
Yeah,
like these birds.
yeah.
But I like the tapaculos as well.
Hmm.
Tapaculos, these little endemics that we have in South America. We have many tapaculo species in Chile. And they were like small rodents, like mice with feathers. They don't fly much. They don't like to fly. They can't fly much. So they they run fast and they move very fast between the vegetation. I really like the tapaculos.
Yeah.
But I think when people ask me this question about my favorite bird, I always come the corvids again.
Yeah.
And I think if I have to show one, perhaps the common raven will be my favorite bird. I have seen it a few times in Europe and even in Europe. I think I have seen it only. Yeah. And different countries in Europe. But I never, I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
But it's still, I think it's my favorite bird. I know it's common now, in many places in, the North America and northern part of Europe. I think now it's the common raven. I think the name is northern raven. I think that they.
Yeah.
But I think I will choose that one.
That's a good choice.
This big black bird. Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. They really are special, and And I was going to say something before also about the tapaculos. As a side note, it's a great example actually of convergent evolution in a way, because there was a lack of rodent activity in that part of South America, I guess, and it's the same with the kiwi in New Zealand. The ecological niche is taken over by birds. I find that very interesting. And all them and. Most of the mammals in Chile are miniature mammals, which is really interesting as well. I don't know why that is. Why is that? Do you know?
Well, I think we had like a very like you mentioned, like evolution. I think we had like we share many aspects in that way with Australia and New Zealand. We didn't have much mammals in the past. We only have birds here. These big raptor kind of birds, these terror birds, I think they're called.
Yeah.
And those the the top predators, and we didn't have many mammals. So with this Panama, that bridge, not the Panama Channel. I mean when South America came together with North America, that was the time that the mammals started to go south. And they didn't get so much in to Chile. because Chile is, very south, and we have these barriers, natural barriers, like you mentioned. We have the Andes, we have the Atacama Desert, so it's a natural barrier for many species. And of course, in the south we have, Antarctica. It's nothing. South of Chile is just this Antarctica. It's this rough sea. So we have a lot of natural barriers. So not many mammals came to Chile, except for a few, like you said, small mammals. Yeah. So for example, we have this small deer, probably the Pudu deer is probably one of the smallest in the world, maybe the smallest in the world.
Yeah.
Of the deer, this family. Then we have another deer which is a bit bigger, the huemul.
Oh yeah.
And that's it. And then we have these camel, like llamas, and the guanaco. They look like camels. I think it's the same family, camel family. And we don't have many other mammals. And then a few, of course, carnivores. We have 3 foxes, some mustelids, puma, but we have a lot of marine mammals. And then you can find really, really big ones. We have a lot of whales, almost all the whales. They go through at least Chile. Some they go past, but some others they stay here and they breed here. But mammals, marine mammals, we have a lot in terms of, if you compare with the land mammals. I mean,
Yeah.
But in the mainland, we don't have many. So we have a lot of these birds that for example, we have vast grass fields in Patagonia. No mammals, no native mammals. So we had a lot of geese. Geese, they do the same evolution, like sheep in other places.
Yeah.
But we have geese here.
Yeah.
So I think we're a quite new country or new continent. So mammals haven't arrived yet. Actually, we have many islands without mammals in Chile still. Like, for example, the Juan Fernandez Archipelago, no mammals. They never arrived.
Yeah, of course, the holy grail of Chilean birding maybe is the Juan Fernandez fire crown, right? The hummingbird.
Oh yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing species. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And one of my favorite Chilean birds is and it's quite a big family, but the tinamous are they're so great, and in a way they also act as ecological agents, that mammals occupy in other areas of the world, because they're big, bulky terrestrial, it's so much potential for birding in Chile. So again, if you're listening and you want to go to Chile, definitely contact Rodrigo. So the last question is, I'm very curious to hear your answer. Is if you had 2 weeks of free time, no commitments, and you had unlimited resources, where would you go birding in the whole world?
Also a very good, hard question. There's so many places. So many places. If I have to choose a continent, I will choose Africa. I think Africa will be, South America too. There's so many places here, but it's quite easy for me. I can move here in South America, so it's not really my dream destination, because it's quite easy. It's here. I mean, but Africa is definitely one of my dream destinations as a continent, and of course I will try to combine, see these big mammals and birds.
Yeah.
So if I have to choose, perhaps Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, maybe those. I know those not easy, but I think will be those 3 will be maybe my dream countries. And the shoebill.
Yes.
Big stork.
Yeah.
That's maybe one of my dream birds.
Oh, of course, your dream bird.
I will try to see that species. Yeah. So I will try to see that species and combine that with, of course, other birds and of course see these big mammals. It's always my dream, to see these big mammals in the savannah and all that. So I think Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya.
Yeah.
And even South Africa if I have time. So I can do a pelagic trip from Cape Town or something.
Of course. Yeah. So, you have so many amazing
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
For me, it's the same. My dream destination is also Africa, specifically
Uh-huh.
tropical Africa.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah.
You know, strictly speaking,
Right.
tropical. You know, jungles, because
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
so underexplored. It's like, and I've mentioned this probably on every episode in the past 3 episodes, but I'm so interested because they're so impenetrable. Those African tropical jungles, that it's like
Right.
what is hiding in there?
Oh
The
yeah.
birds, you
Oh,
know, it's crazy.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know. But anyway, I think that's a good note to end on. So, Rodrigo Reyes, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been really good to see you.
No, thank you, Thomas. And apologize again for my English. I when I speak, that's the hard part.
Not at all, not at all. You did
Yeah.
fantastically, and again, it's great to see you. So, hope to see you again one day when I'm back in Chile or when you come to Australia.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Birding Today podcast with Rodrigo Reyes. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed participating in the conversation. If you'd like to drop me a line, you can reach me at birdingtoday@gmail.com. It's always great to hear from listeners, so please don't hesitate. If you've been considering it lately, then take this as a sign, and I hope to hear from you soon. That's all for this week, folks, and I will see you next Friday for the next episode. Thank you, and happy birding to all of you.